via live stream, I'm really glad that you're here, especially with the continual daunting news coming out of our capital. It's good to be in community together today. So that our time together is not interrupted, please take a moment to silence your devices and put them on Do Not Disturb so that we're not interrupted. Thank you so much. We are excited to welcome back Home Remedy as our musical guest for the day. Home Remedy is a local duo featuring the harmonies of Cindy Menace and Melinda Monroe. They are known for both original and borrowed music from the 60s, 70s, and beyond. Their first selection today is an original by Melinda titled Change.
Good morning.
Good morning.
When we submitted this, I actually gave them in the wrong order. So we're going to start with a song called Working on a World by Iris DeMent. I don't know if we have any Iris DeMent fans. Yeah? All right, good. So this one's called Working on a World. Got so down in trouble, nearly lost my head. Started waking every morning, filled with sadness, fear, and dread. The world I took for granted is crashing to the ground. Then I realized I might not live long enough to ever see it turn around. Then I got to thinking of the ones who came before and all the sacrifices that they made to open up so many doors. Doors I got to walk through on streets paved for me by people who were working on a world they never got to see. Now I'm working on a world I may never see, joining forces with the warriors of love who came before and will follow you and me. Then I start to thinking, don't have all the answers to the troubles of the day, but neither did all our ancestors. They persevered anyway. When I see a little baby reaching out its arms to me, I remember why I'm working on a world I may never see. Now I'm working on a world I may never see, joining forces with the warriors of love who came before and will follow you and me. Knowing I'm privileged just to be working on a world I may never see. Yeah, I'm working on a world I may never see.
So good, as always. Thank you. Each week, we read the Ethical Education for Youth core values as a way to bring us together and remind us of our shared commitments. Today, our core values reader is Cassie Freeman.
Every person is important and unique. Every person deserves to be treated fairly and kindly. I can learn from everyone. I am a part of this earth. I cherish it and all the life upon it. I learn from the world around me using my senses, mind, and feelings. I am a member of the world community, which depends on the cooperation of all people for peace and justice. I can learn from the past to build for the future. I am free to question. I am free to choose what I believe. I accept responsibility for my choices and actions. I strive to live my values.
Fabulous, as always. Thank you so much, Cassie. The Youth Education Program is available to all children and provides a robust ethical education, today focused on evolution and science. And I don't think we have any Sikh students up here because they're all downstairs learning about those fun topics. It is now time for opening words, when we get to learn more about our fellow community members and their interests and passions. This is a time to deepen our connections to one another. Please join me in welcoming Blake Heinrichs.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Blake. Pronouns are he, him. I'm sure most of you recognize me from the welcome table or the guest table down at the coffee hour. This right here is Buster. He is my favorite toy from when I was a kid and the only one I kept after donating the rest. So promised a friend that I would bring him to Ethical one of these days, and I figured what better day than when I have video evidence, right? So I joined sometime in 2024. I genuinely can't remember if it was spring or summer. I've been here going on a year now. And I joined after my third time visiting because I moved to St. Louis in 2020, middle of the pandemic. It was rough meeting new people, and even rougher when I was a liberal atheist, just fresh out of college, and then ending up as a plumber and blue collar in the Midwest in Missouri. It was very difficult to find people that I genuinely connected with. So when I heard about the Ethical Society, it was on a Facebook ad for the candlelight concerts, which are great. Definitely suggest you go check one of those out. But hearing about the Ethical Society caught my interest because I needed a place where I felt welcome, where I felt like my values would be shared by the people around me. And in a nation that has truly gone in unconscionable direction, we need that now more than ever. We need solidarity. We need ethics, and we need just a little bit of empathy, which, according to our vice president, is a sin. So I can say with absolute confidence that I have never been more proud to be surrounded by sinners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Blake. If you are a member and would like to share opening words, we will happily get you on the schedule. You can contact Carol Beer or send an email to the platform speakers team. I hope that you'll take advantage of the opportunity to share of yourself with this community.
All right, I'll be on shortly, thanks.
Let's welcome Home Remedy back to the stage for their second musical selection, which could be change or something else.
It is in fact change. Cindy and I, both as songwriters, have the privilege and the responsibility to use our voices during times of trouble and times of joy. And it is such a joy for us to bring our music to you today. This is an original song. We write music together, we write individually. My name's up there, but actually Cindy worked on this too. And it came from actually the original phrase that I was working with was "let a flower change us." So you'll hear that in the song, but it morphs beyond that.
If you are a member and would like to share opening words, we will happily get you on the schedule. You can contact Carol Beer or send an email to the platform speakers team. I hope that you'll take advantage of the opportunity to share yourself with this community. Let's welcome Home Remedy back to the stage for their second musical selection, which could be change or something else.
Let a flower change us. Let the beauty of a flower change our hearts. Let a conversation and a different way to see change the way we view who's family and who we can hear. Open the blinds, let a different conversation change our minds, change our hearts, change us, change us, change our minds. Let love change us. The compassion we receive, unreserved in the stories that we weave, is a shifting mirror in our souls archives. Let compassion and love change our lives, change our hearts, change our minds, change our lives, change our hearts, change us, change our minds, change our lives, 'cause we are changed. We are changed by
That was really, really great. Thank you. Before our main address, we'd like to take a moment to empty our minds, relax our bodies, and take some mindful, deep breaths. Please join me for 1 minute of mindful breathing. All right. In honor of Darwin Day, our platform address today features evolutionary biologist Dr. Jonathan Losos. Jonathan is an evolutionary biologist known for his research on how lizards rapidly evolve to adapt to changing environments. He is a St. Louis native and a graduate of Ladue Horton Watkins High School and Harvard University, and he received his PhD in zoology from the University of California. After 10 years at both Washington University in St. Louis and Harvard University, Jonathan returned to WashU in 2018 as the William H. Danforth Distinguished University Professorship and Director of the Living Earth Collaborative, a partnership between WashU, the St. Louis Zoo, and the Missouri Botanical Gardens. The collaborative's mission is to advance knowledge of biodiversity and to ensure the future of Earth's species. Losos has written 3 books, most recently, The Cat's Meow, How Cats Evolved from the Savanna to Your Sofa, which is on my next to read list. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. Jonathan Losos, who has graciously agreed to join us from his home as he's unfortunately ill today. So he'll be joining us on the screen.
I'm sorry, I've had a technical difficulty. Am I live now? I'm supposed to mute myself. I'm sorry, I've already had technical problems. Are we good to go? I'm looking at my text. Okay, I'm very sorry. I managed to screw up from the very beginning. Thank you so much for inviting me to be with you today to celebrate Darwin's birthday. I'm very sorry I'm not with you. I appear to perhaps have caught what has been going around, and so I'm doing this virtually. I'm very sorry, but I'm honored and delighted to be here to help celebrate Charles Darwin's 216th birthday. Actually, that would be this coming Wednesday. He was born February 12th, 1809, coincidentally the same day that Abraham Lincoln was born. And so I'd like to do 2 things in my talk today. First, tell you a few things about that you may not know about Darwin, and leading into a little bit about my own research. And then I was asked to talk a little bit about what evolutionary biology, I think, can tell us about an ethical life, how we should treat each other, and so on. I have to tell you, it's very intimidating coming to the Ethical Society to talk about ethics. I'm sure many of you know a lot more about them than I do, and well, I hope you may find what I say to not be so impressive, but I will do my best. Well, having said that, let's go for the first part of the talk. Some things that you probably don't know about Darwin. The first thing that is not widely appreciated is that Darwin was a great experimentalist. Doing an experiment is the gold standard of modern science, but it didn't begin until the early 20th century. 50 years before his time, Darwin did experiments to test all kinds of ideas. In this way, as in so many, he was well ahead of his time. For example, he wondered, how did plants make their way to islands in the middle of the ocean, thousands of miles from land? And so he did an experiment to see, can seeds survive germination in salt water? He was interested in how plants grow towards the light, and so he cut off different parts of them to see which parts were critical for them to grow towards sunlight. He was interested, can earthworms hear? So he did experiments, played music to them. This is an experiment being reconducted by a colleague of mine in a classroom exercise. And in fact, if you're interested more, check out this article from a few years ago that listed 8 of Darwin's experiments that you can try at home. Now, having said this, it is notable that Darwin never did any experiments to test his greatest theory, the theory of evolution by natural selection. It didn't even occur to him to try to do such experiments. And the reason, of course, is very clear. Darwin thought that evolution occurred gradually, extremely slowly, so slowly that it would take thousands of years to show any sign of evolutionary change. And so, of course, to try to do an experiment of evolution was pointless. Now, I'll come back to this in a moment, but I do want to point out to you that Darwin, as you might have imagined from all these experiments, solved many problems. He's known for the theory of evolution, but he figured out, for example, how coral atolls form by growing around islands that then sink into the sea. He figured out why this moth has an enormous proboscis, because it pollinates a flower with flowers this big. He figured out how soil is formed by by the work of worms. So he figured out many different things. Nonetheless, he wasn't right about everything, and he got two major things wrong. And I have to tell you, some of my colleagues think it's blasphemy to say this, that we shouldn't be saying Darwin was wrong about anything, which I think is crazy. But Darwin was fallible. He was right about an amazing number of things, but not everything. The first thing he got wrong was how genetics works, how inheritance works. His ideas on that were completely mistaken. And that, of course, it makes sense. This was well before the time that Gregor Mendel's experiments on peas were rediscovered about the turn of the 20th century. And so he was wrong about inheritance. Secondly, as I've already mentioned, he was wrong about the pace of evolutionary change. He thought that it would occur very slowly. But we now know that when species are subjected to strong natural selection, as often occurs when the environment changes, they can evolve very rapidly. Now, we really can't hold this against Darwin because back in his day, no one was studying evolution. There were no data to look for. So he had to form his ideas based on extrapolations from ideas about geology at the time, and frankly, from borrowing from Victorian sensibilities. For the upper middle class and upper class in Victorian times, change was a scary thing. There was a lot going on. So their view was that change should go very slowly. So I should tell you, I'm getting a note that says time left 9 minutes, 45 seconds. I'm not sure what will happen then on the top of my screen. In any case, Darwin was wrong about that. And we now know that change can occur rapidly when selection is strong, which usually occurs when the environment changes. We first came to know this from laboratory studies on fruit flies and other laboratory organisms that really started about a century ago. And here's one example. You can count the number of little hair-like structures called bristles on the abdomen of a fruit fly. And here's the distribution of a population. The average is about 37 with some variation among individuals. Well, the way these experiments work is you take the individuals with the most hairs, the most bristles, and let them mate with each other and throw the others away. So that is imposing selection, selecting for the ones with the most bristles. Let them mate. You do the same thing generation after generation. And very quickly, in this case, in about 30 generations, you see a huge shift in the population. The average has more than doubled to about 85. And there's not even an overlap between the largest ones at the outset and the ones with the fewest bristles at the end of the experiment. And so this shows that when strong selection is imposed, evolutionary change can occur very rapidly. Subsequently, we've seen this occurring in nature. The example that really first caught people's attention was the study of a moth called the peppered moth in England during the Industrial Revolution. Before that time, the peppered moth was grayish with little black specklings, little peppers. But then during the Industrial Revolution, when trees were covered with soot, they quickly evolved to be very dark in color. And this was documented by collectors who had collected moths throughout time. And so there was a record of this change. And it showed that as the environment changed, the moths adapted very quickly. And there's a happy sequel to this story when England cleaned up their errors in the 1960s, so the trees lightened up again and the moths changed right back. Subsequently, we have seen change in all kinds of organisms adapting to the chemicals that we try to use to get rid of them. That rodents have evolved resistance to rodenticide. Many insects resistance to pesticide. Of course, plants resistance to the herbicides. This evolution of resistance, that is adaptation by natural selection. The organisms finding ways around the new environment that they're facing. And of course, we're all familiar with the evolution of microbes to become resistant to our antibiotics. All of these evolutionary changes are occurring very rapidly. Now, still, some people might say, well, all of the examples I've just given you have been examples from parts of the environment that humans have caused radical changes in. And maybe in undisturbed nature, this doesn't occur. It's only when we make huge changes like dumping pesticides all over the place. But this last idea was disproven by work on the Galapagos Islands on seed-eating finches that are named after Darwin. They're called Darwin's finches. The famous Princeton biologists, Peter and Rosemary Grant, showed that when the climate changes, when it rains a lot and there are lots of small seeds, very quickly the finches evolve smaller beaks to handle the small seeds. And then when it becomes dry and arid and there are only large beaks, large seeds, they evolve in the other direction. So now it's become very clear from all these different lines of evidence that in this case, Darwin was wrong, that when natural selection is strong, populations can evolve very quickly. So that's where I come into the story, or my own personal little vignette. It has to do with my work on lizards that occur in the Caribbean. And all this was happening and coming to a head in the 1980s while I was conducting my doctoral research on this type of lizard. They're called anolis lizards. Many of you may have seen them if you've been to Florida or elsewhere in the Southeast, or certainly if you've gone to Caribbean islands or to Central or South America. It turns out that there are 400 species of this type of lizard, and I've spent my career studying them. Now, there is one particular aspect that was a focus of my research in graduate school, which was how long their legs are. It turns out that there is a repeated pattern that species that use broad surfaces, like tree trunks, at least on my left on the screen, have long legs. And species that use narrow surfaces like twigs have very short legs. And by knowing the evolutionary tree of these species, we can tell that this trait has evolved many times. That every time they evolve to start using narrow surfaces, they evolve shorter legs. And we even have studies of their functional capabilities that indicate why this might be. That on broad surfaces, lizards with long legs can run faster. Whereas on narrow surfaces, lizards with short legs are able to deal with the narrow and irregular surfaces. And so this would seem to be a clear case of evolutionary adaptation, changing their limb length to adapt to the different surfaces that the different species use. But of course, this is just what we call a correlation, an association between traits, and maybe they're not causally related. Maybe there's some other factor that is responsible both for lizards to use broad surfaces and to have long legs. So in the ideal world, one would do an experiment. So I'm doing my doctoral research, and I read a paper by a leading scientist in the field from the University of California, Davis, where they had put lizards onto tiny islands in the Bahamas that don't naturally have lizards on them. And they wanted to study that because they were so small. They wanted to study the populations going extinct and learn something about extinction, something we still need to know to this day. And so they did, and it looks like our time's about to go out, and I'm supposed to go to a different Zoom link. I will do that. Let me finish the story, and I will do that in just a moment. I'm gonna have to get on my emails, sorry. This might be complicated. Okay, short story. Here's the lizard in question. It is the brown anole, a very common species in the Bahamas, and it's been introduced to Florida where it's very common there. Here's where the work was done. It was in the Exuma Cays in the middle of the Bahamas on small islands, like the little ones next to that mainland mass there, or the tiny ones in the middle of this map. Notice that the legend at the bottom is a kilometer, so we're talking small islands, tiny islands. So I had figured that these islands differed in vegetation just by chance, some having bigger vegetation like this island, others with small, narrow vegetation. And it turns out I was right. And so the prediction is, based on what we knew from different species evolving over millions of years, that the species using narrow surfaces would evolve shorter legs, whereas the ones on broad surfaces would remain with their long legs. And here they are on their different islands. Here I am measuring the lizards. I would go out to the island. That rope you can see by my foot is attached to a motorboat. I would catch the lizards, measure them right then and there, and then let them go. And here's the result. Each point here is a island, the average value for an island. And as you can see, the islands that have short legs are using narrow surfaces, just as predicted, whereas the islands using broad surfaces on the far right have long legs. So there is an evolutionary association, and the species have evolved and adapted over time, just as predicted, over about 11 years. So the species can evolve rapidly, and this was essentially an experiment, although not planned to study this question, looking at the effect of perch diameter on limb length. Now, subsequently, I got the chance to repeat the experiment on some tiny islands that had been cleared away by hurricanes. And what we found is that these lizards, that they occur in the forest in the background. They are natural to this area, and by putting them on the islands, we're mimicking a natural process. And so some islands that used to have lizards, a hurricane came along, washed them away, so we put lizards back on it. And you can see how scraggly the vegetation is on these islands. Here's a couple of different ones of our islands. Our prediction is that they should evolve shorter legs. I will tell you that we had fun new equipment, because this was several years later. We had an X-ray machine to measure their legs. And here you can see the X-ray machine. The lizard is on a little plate underneath there, like the thing you put in your mouth in the dentist's office. And it's recording how long the legs are. And we can see all kinds of fun things. The lizard on the left, turns out they eat a lot of snails. The one in the middle is a female with a really large egg. And the one on the right, you can see has eaten a baby lizard. We saw a number of examples of cannibalism of the adults eating the babies. All right, I'm gonna have to get off this and get on a different link. And let's see, I guess I don't have to lose you. You just stop sharing. Got to turn my email on. And let's see, there's the new link. Oh no, I'm gonna disappear when I do this. I'll be back in a minute. Bye.
One second while we join my Zoom.
Okay. All systems go. Okay. There we are. And I assume that all is good. I'm gonna look at the chat for 1 second to make sure. Okay, here we go. So here's when we're X-raying the screen so we can measure the legs. And here is the result. And that is, oh, here's some that had their hands chopped off by maybe a seabird. And the prediction is that they would evolve shorter legs. And sure enough, all 7 populations over the course of just 3 years evolved shorter legs. So clearly, experimental proof that when conditions change, species can evolve very rapidly. So now, other people, I was not the first to conduct an experiment in the field on nature. I was actually the second. Now there have been additional experiments. There's all kinds of evidence. It's now generally accepted that species can evolve rapidly when conditions change and selection is strong. Is that good news or bad news? Well, it's kind of both. It's good news because we know that we're messing up the world in so many ways and challenging many species. Maybe some of them can evolve solutions to global warming, pollution, and so on. Scientists are now hard at work figuring this out, and it seems possible that some species do have that capability. Others probably not. I would guess probably most species no, just because the changes we're causing are so large in magnitude, but probably some can. As for the bad news, I've already told you that, and that is that there are species that are problems to us that we try to manage with chemicals or other means. Turns out they're very capable of evolving to outsmart us and outwit us and still cause problems. So like many things, evolution is neither good or bad, it just is. With that, I want to switch to the second part of my talk, and this is exactly what Crystal said when she emailed me to invite me. She said, how can knowledge of evolution inspire us to make improvements in our own lives or broader society? So what can knowing how evolution works, can we apply this in any way? Before answering that question, I want to briefly give you a quick reminder how evolution by natural selection occurs. Basically, there are three necessary conditions that, if met, will result in evolution. First, there must be variation in a population. There must be something for selection to work on to favor one type over another. Second, those different types, those variants, must differ in the number of offspring they leave in the next generation. This is selection. Individuals with some trait doing better than individuals with the other trait, and so leaving more offspring and passing on their genes more to the next population. And the third part is that offspring must resemble their parents. That is, if individuals that are green survive better or have more offspring, those offspring will be green, because if there's no link, so the traits must be inherited. Now, I want to emphasize that if these three conditions are met, then evolution will occur. It's basically an algorithm. It's just a logical exercise. Check off the three conditions, you get evolution. Let me give you an example, near and dear to my heart, cats. Suppose you had a population of spotted cats, and then a mutation came along, you had an individual with stripes. Now here's the variation that I was talking about. You have variation in the population. Let's suppose those striped cats survive better. They live longer, and as a result, probably have more offspring. Well, in the next generation, you would get relatively more of the striped ones, and if this continued generation after generation, you would get more and more striped ones until you would have nothing but striped ones. The population would have evolved from spots to stripes because stripes were favored. This could occur in another way. Suppose instead of surviving better, the striped individuals didn't survive. They lasted, they had lives for the same length, but they just had more offspring. Every time they bred, they had 4 offspring instead of just 1. Well, of course, in the next generation, you would have relatively more striped ones, and if that continued, the same result. So this is how evolution by natural selection occurs. Variation in the population, some variants leave more offspring, and assuming that's a genetically based trait, then the trait will evolve. Notice this applies to any trait. There's nothing in this algorithm about the traits need to make the species better in any sense. Nothing about progress, certainly about morality or ethics. Nonetheless, it's easy to imagine natural selection as a force for good in some way. Think about the marvelous adaptations we see in the natural world that have evolved by natural selection. The cheetah, for example, the fastest land animal on Earth, can run 75 miles per hour. This is basically a cat that evolved these capabilities by natural selection. Or hummingbirds, which you're all probably familiar with, incredibly fast and agile, yet able to hover at a standstill while they glean nectar from a plant. Or the majestic redwoods towering 300 feet above the ground. These are incredible marvels that have evolved because natural selection has built them up by making them better to do whatever it is that they are doing. And these evolutionary adaptations apply also to behaviors as well. Many wonderful behaviors are exhibited by animals. For example, muskox. They form a defensive ring when threatened by predators like wolves. The big adults on the outside with the weak and the young protected on the inside. This looking out for each other and defending each other as a group is certainly a marvelous defensive adaptation for working together, something that we would think we would aspire to as a good thing to happen. Or many birds mate for life. They are monogamous. The mother and the father working together, working very hard to raise their offspring. Again, a wonderful feature that should we would aspire to ourselves. So natural selection in many times does produce features that seem good, that seem something that we should aspire to, that we can look to evolution and natural selection and say, yes, it shows us the way. But remember what I was saying before about the three conditions for evolution to occur. That it only requires these three conditions and evolution will occur. This is a mindless procedure. There is no planning to it. There is no intention. It is just a mindless one based on these requirements. And the reason I emphasize that is there's nothing that says that the variants favored by natural selection are good in any sense, or moral, or ethical, or will lead to progress. Rather, any trait that leads to individuals with that trait having more offspring will increase in the next generation if it is genetically inherited. That means that traits that we would consider to be bad can also be passed along. For example, I've already mentioned cannibalism. This adult lizard is eating a baby of its own species. And if you think about it, this lizard is getting a twofer. It's getting a very nutritious big meal, and it's eliminating a potential competitor from the population. It's easy to see how a species with such a trait, if that came along as a mutation, would do better than the others. It would perhaps live longer, have more offspring, that trait would get passed along, and cannibalism would evolve in the population. Another example, you're probably familiar that some praying mantises, the females consume the male, they eat the male during the act of mating. How is that for horrible? Why does that happen? Well, why does the male let it happen? Why have they evolved to go along with it? Well, the reason is that the male is giving a female a very good meal indeed, a whole body that she can use to make more eggs that are fathered by that male. So it is a great way to pass his genes on to the next generation. And so in some circumstances, it is actually beneficial for males to basically sacrifice themselves to the female to leave more descendants in the next generation. And finally, my last example, which is really a horrible one, is infanticide. Infanticide, in which males kill off the young, occurs in lions, in some monkeys, and a number of other species. And here's what happens. When a new group of lions takes over a pride of females, prides are composed of females, the first thing they do is they kill all the cubs. Now, why would they do this? Well, for two reasons. One is the cubs are not their offspring. Why should they spend energy raising some other male's offspring? But more importantly, life is very tough for male lions. It's very brutal and short and contentious. And the average time that a group of male lions is in charge of a pride is quite short before another group, a bigger or badder or tougher group, comes along and kicks them out. And so they have a very short time to sow their oats, to reproduce and get their offspring into the next generation. And while females are taking care of cubs, they are not reproductively active. And so by killing off the cubs, the females quickly come back into breeding status, and they mate with the pride owners, the males, who then are able to father offspring and get offspring into the next generation. You can see the evolutionary logic to that. Males who do that pass on more offspring to the next generation, and so this trait evolved by natural selection. So the point I want to make here is, I think it's very clear. Evolution by natural selection is purposeless. There's no mindfulness to it. It does not lead to traits that necessarily are good or admirable by our standards. There is no guidance to be had by looking to nature to justify or tell us what we should be doing. And so my first lesson from here is a bit of a nihilistic one, is don't look to what has evolved in nature to decide how we should behave or treat each other, because it is an unreliable source. Some things in nature are good, others, by our standards, are not so good. Moreover, I think these examples show that natural selection as a process is not something that we should try to include in our human society and how it functions, because it doesn't necessarily lead to good outcomes. Nonetheless, there have been some really horrible policies ever since Darwin proposed his ideas that have taken that view that if natural selection is how nature evolves, if it occurs in nature, then it must be good for humans too. There was a movement called social Darwinism at the end of the 19th century that basically said, well, nature is about struggle for resources, and that's how evolution occurs, and so that's how human society should be the same way. And they applied natural selection principles to economics and politics. And you know what? It was a great way for the rich and powerful to justify getting richer and powerful and not to worry about the weak and powerless becoming weaker and even having less power, because it's natural. This is how things go in nature. The best get better, the worst fall away. And it justified many policies that I suspect most of us would not find very palatable. I should note out, they called it Darwinism. Charles Darwin had nothing to do with it. Subsequently, about a century ago, there was the idea of eugenics, which basically said, well, natural selection is the way that species improve themselves. We should apply natural selection to humans to make the human population better. And so again, individuals with certain traits shouldn't be breeding. And in fact, many horrible policies led to sterilization or other things of groups that were considered to be bad in one way or another. And once again, wasn't it surprising that those who were in power it wasn't their traits that were bad, it was the traits of the people that, for various reasons, they didn't like. So lesson number 2, don't look to the evolutionary process of natural selection as a model for how society should function. It's not a force for good. It's not something we should emulate in our own dealings with each other. So where does this leave us? Is this message entirely negative, that there's nothing to be learned from evolution? I would not go that far. I think that evolution can teach us a couple of things. Getting back to the question I was asked to address. The first are evolution can produce wonderful things. I've already showed you some of them. In fact, engineers and others look towards nature to learn much about how to build good structures of many sorts. Aerodynamic engineers have looked, for example, at bird flight to learn how to build better aircraft and drones and all kinds of things. Understanding how redwoods can grow so tall can be important for building structures and so on. So there's much to be learned from particular examples of evolution. And this extends even to some of the way that animal societies work. We can look at those muskox and say, that's a good way of doing things. What can we learn from the muskox or from the Carolina wren? But what we can't do is just assume anything in nature is admirable and should be emulated. But there are some good things that we can decide, yes, they do things that we should be like. More generally, nature has given us one gift evolution has given us one gift that we really have the opportunity to take advantage of, and that is our incredible brain. We have the cognitive ability unlike any other animal. We're able to think in the future. We're able to reason. Most importantly, we don't just think about how the world is and how we're going to react to it. We can think about how the world ought to be, how we should treat people in ways that are fair and just and ethical, how we should treat people in the way we would like to be treated by ourselves. This is something that, for the most part, no other animal has that capability. And so this is the result of natural selection. That is our major adaptation in our evolutionary history. And it gives us the opportunity to build a just, ethical society. I would say it gives us the responsibility to take advantage of what nature and evolution have provided, and in that way build a just, ethical society. Well, with that thought, I do wish you a very happy celebration of Darwin's Day, always a big event. And my cat Leo has come to say happy Darwin's Day too. And with that, I'm so sorry that I won't be there, that I'm not there in person, and that I can't speak with you after this, but do feel free to contact me. My email's easy to find at Washington University if you have any questions or you'd like to discuss. Thank you very much again for the invitation.
Thank you to Jonathan for that fabulous talk and for being so flexible, and for our team of Crystal, Bear, Claire, for making this work very last minute. I think it went well, and I hope that you all agree. The Welcome team will now take up a collection to support the society. We rely on the generosity of members and friends, so please consider donating. If you don't have cash with you today, you can donate at ethicalstl.org/donate or use the QR code on the screen. We appreciate anything that you may be able to offer. If you are interested in joining the Ethical Society, or you are a visitor and would like to know more, please visit the Visitors Connect table in the Becker Room after platform today. We also happen to have cake to celebrate Darwin's birthday, which I hear has his face on it, so make sure to stop by for that as well. I have a few announcements. The International Relations Lecture, sponsored by the TWA and the AAUW, is scheduled for Tuesday, February 11th at 10:45 in the auditorium. The speaker is Dr. Jason Knuff, professor at St. Louis University and expert on water security. His topic is water security in a changing climate. In the case of severe bad weather, please check with the office for alternative plans or connect with Sue Williams. Please remember, if you attended the forum this morning, or if you haven't completed the survey to give feedback of future programming and speakers, we do want to hear from you. The survey is online, and there are a few hard copies at the table outside the auditorium. The link to the online survey is in the Wednesday email. Responses to the survey will inform future programming and the selection of speakers. I also have a message from our Stewardship Task Force. A hearty thank you for those able to attend last Sunday's Appreciation Celebration Luncheon. By now, all members should have received their pledge renewal packets by mail. Please respond by April 13th. And don't forget that you can update your pledge online. To follow the pledging campaign progress, refer to the display monitor in the Becker Room, as well as the screen here in the auditorium. I'd like to welcome Claire Alexander, formerly Menace, to the stage for an announcement about music.
Good morning. First, I want to say an enthusiastic welcome and thank you to Bear Wade on AV, who figured so many things out today. He's trying to hide. But also, since he has been with us, he's figured out so many ways to problem solve and make our AV experience better. So you should say hi and thank you if you get a chance to do it too. Okay, so we have two very cool music opportunities this month. The first one is in-house. It's here at the Ethical Society. It is Sunday, February 23rd, and it's our annual music festival. It features performers from our membership. Exciting. You get to see all the skills and passions that we have here at the Ethical Society, and you're invited to join in too. So there is a very low lift opportunity. It's a really easy way to get your feet wet. Is that yeah, dip your toes in and try out one of our music programs. So our ethical voices are going to sing a song with the ethical band at the end of the music festival. One song, easy learn, you know it already. And if you would like to learn it with other people, there are two opportunities to do that. Today, right after platform, in here, it's a really easy rehearsal with small groups singing just your part, so you won't get confused with a lot of sounds all around you. And all the people are cool. Win-win. Okay, next week, we'll do the same thing, but we'll be down in the Hanky Room. It'll be right after platform, and I will be with you that whole time next week. So why not, right? Okay, there's one other very cool opportunity. We are partnering with the St. Louis Public Libraries, and for their Black History Month programming, we're doing a program on Tuesday night after the music festival, so that's the 25th. And Justice Choir St. Louis, which also includes some crossover of ethical voices, anybody can come sing with us. we're going to join with a musicologist from Washington University who's going to give a lecture on the evolution of Black American music. And we're going to do some interactive singing with the audience that comes to that event on that Tuesday night. It's going to be so fun. Lauren is incredible, the ethnomusicologist that we're working with. And if you would like to be part of that singing group that just helps the audience sing along with some really familiar tunes throughout the evolution of Black American music, you're actually going to learn those songs in our rehearsals here this week and next week. One more option. You're a music person. You want to learn it on your own. We have practice tracks and sheet music. You can do all of your preparation on your own, or you can try it out for a little bit and then come join us next week if you want to take a little break and then try. I will have all the music printed right up here after platform today. The Evolution one is on Tuesday, February 25th. It's at, thank you, Central Library in the Carnegie Room, 3rd story. If you would like more details, you'll see them in the newsletter this week, and also you can email me and I'll shoot it out. If you're on the music email list, you're already getting that stuff. But 6 p.m. is the start time for that event, but if you want to sing with us, we have an earlier call time. All right, I'm going to stop talking now. Yay!
Thank you, Claire. And I forgot to say, just in case you didn't know, Executive Director of Community Experience at the Ethical Society of St. Louis. We would love to keep you informed about future events at the Ethical Society. You may use the QR code to sign up for the weekly newsletter, check the Friends of the Facebook group, or email the relevant staff or volunteer. This is a busy and vibrant place that relies on volunteers, and I hope that you get involved and connected in ways that are meaningful for you. Let's welcome Home Remedy for their final selection, an original by Melinda and Cindy called Hold On.
This last one that we're going to do, sometimes I come to music writing with an idea, sometimes Melinda does, and this one was back in January of 2017. And thinking about all the steps forward that we had made over the last 8 years. And so this one is called Hold On.
We were hoping it would have a short shelf life. And it's back.
It's Love is love, we've got the right to marry. Our borders are open to our friends in need. Love is love, not childish and petty. Following truth, rejecting greed. You gotta hold on, we can do better. Hold on when you know that it's wrong. Hold on, reach for your neighbor. Community makes us strong. Community makes us strong. Where is love? Oh, where is compassion? We're building a wall to lock in hate, chipping away at so much progress. Don't take us back, don't make us wait. You gotta hold on, we can do better. Hold on when you know that it's wrong. Hold on, reach for your neighbor. Community makes us strong. Community makes us strong. Tell the world we won't go away. Resist the words of untruth. Not one more trick, not one more slap, not one more lie. Hold on, we can do better. Hold on when you know that it's wrong. Hold on, reach for your neighbor. Community makes us strong. Community makes us strong. Give us you're tired, you're poor, and you're hungry. We'll raise a light for all to see. Rise up with all of your yearning. Home of the brave and land of the free. You gotta hold on, we can do better. Hold on when you know that it's wrong. Hold on, reach for your neighbor. Community makes us strong. Community makes us strong. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Thanks.
Community does make us better. Thank you for reminding us to hold on and to act together to maintain that community. Thank you all for being here today, for each other and for yourselves. I hope today's platform helped you feel more connected to one another and motivated you to get involved in the community and issues that you're passionate about. I welcome you to spend more time in community. There's cake, and I think I saw coffee being made as I walked upstairs earlier. It's in the Becker room downstairs. If you don't know where that is, follow the crowd down the stairs or the elevator. Spend some time together, have conversations, learn about new people, and Norm asks that you remember to turn your cell phones back on so you don't miss any important communications. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.